Today I'm going to tell you about 8 easy tips for easy cake baking. So some of these tips might seem obvious, but they're all things that I did wrong when I first started baking cakes. Number 1, always preheat your oven. Now I know it sounds so simple and so obvious, but I didn't. When I first started baking cakes, I never preheat the oven. I'd turn it on and then put the cake straight in, and then wonder why it was always raw in the middle, burnt on the outside, and slightly wonky. So always make sure you preheat your oven. Number 2, always mix your ingredients in this order. Cream your sugar and butter together first, then add any wet ingredients, and then your dry ingredients. So the sugar and butter, if you cream them together first, if you don't, either you'll get like little blobs of butter throughout, or you'll get little blobs of sugar throughout. So it's a good way of making sure they're completely combined before you then add any of the wet ingredients. Mix those all together and then add your dry. It's always the best way to do it. Number 3, always grease your tins, and preferably use baking paper or greaseproof paper. Again, sounds really simple. The amount of times I've not greased my tin, and then you try and get the cake out and it just falls apart. So it sounds so simple, but it really is like top tip, make sure you do it, and it just makes it so much easier when you take it out. Number 4, be accurate with your weights. Now, when I first started, you'd be like, you'd kind of put the flour in, you'd go over by, 10, 15, 20 grams, and you'd be, it'd be fine. Baking is a science, so you need to make sure you're accurate with your weights, because, too much dry and the cake is too crumbly and powdery, too much wet and it just won't set, so it is accurate. And it is a science, so make sure you stick to the weights that you need. Number 5, don't open the door before the cakes are done. The amount of times when I first started, I'd open the door to see how the cakes were doing because I was worried about them burning, and the middle of the cake would just dip. And then you'd end up with a massive dip in the middle of your cake because you've lost all that air. So make sure you leave it before... So make sure you don't open that door and before the time is done, because you need to make sure your cake is set enough that you're not going to lose the air from it. Number 6, always test that the cakes are cooked through. So using a knife, using a toothpick, anything like that, when you think it's done, just pop it into the middle, take it out. If you have no cake mixture on it and it comes out clean, it's done. If it doesn't, it's still wet on the inside, you need to bake it a little bit more. I only say it because I've done it where I've taken the cake out, oh, it looks done, and it's not. And then you cut into it thinking, yep, I'm going to decorate my cake now, and it's just mush in the middle. Number 7, if you're decorating the cake with fondant icing or anything particularly heavy, leave in cling film for a day. So this was a tip I got taught when I did some baking classes, is the instructor said she always wraps her cake in cling film and leaves it for a day. So it still keeps it moist on the inside, but it means that the cake has time to kind of set a bit more, so then it will support any weight that you put on top. So any like fondant icing or any figures or anything like that, it will set it, so then it supports the weight and it doesn't like dip when you put them on. And number 8, sugar water is your best friend. So sugar water is what I use, and I know a lot of people use it as well, when decorating a cake and icing it days ahead, like in advance. So my kind of schedule, the way I always do things is, I bake it, wrap it in the cling film, leave it for a day. Second day, you cut it, you cut your layers, and then you sprinkle it with sugar water. So sugar water is half hot water and half sugar. It's as simple as that. You can put flavourings in, so when I do chocolate cake, I put cocoa powder in it and make it like a hot chocolate. You can put like lemon in it if you're doing lemon cake, that sort of thing, so you could add it to add the flavour to the cake as well. But primarily it's half boiling water, half sugar, and then you spread that over the top of the cake, just to keep it nice and moist, So then when you put your buttercream on, you put your fondant on, if it's then a couple of days before you go to, you know, the event you're doing or anything like that, the cake is still really, really nice and moist on the inside, and it makes it last a little bit longer. So that is my top 8 tips for easy baking of cakes.